Welcome to this episode, which is very exciting for me because we have the amazing Lois Creamer on the show today. You can read her formal bio in the show notes, but what I'm going to talk to you about is how I first met Lois and how I've known her. I think I've known her for almost 10 years. When I first started NSA, she came to the Mountain West chapter and came and spoke about positioning. And I was really grateful for her thoughts and information. It helped shape the way that I positioned myself then. And over time, she just shows up in multiple places that are amazing for me. We are in a couple of shared speaker groups and people will ask questions, and Lois is almost always the first one. She's got a servant heart and will share and give her advice and information. And so she's like the aunt that loves you and cheers you on and is thrilled for your success. And so I'm excited for her to be on the show with us. Lois, welcome.
Michelle, I have been looking forward to this, friend. Thanks for asking me.
I'm so excited to have this conversation with you because I read your first book, Book More Business, Make Money Speaking, and I love it. I feel like one of the things that I love about your direct approach is that you don't fluff things. In fact, I think sometimes when you give them advice and you're direct about it, you can say things that other people can't say because for whatever reason, they just know that you love them, even if you're saying direct things. And so what I want to start with is you telling us, how did you know that you needed to help speakers do better? You were a speaker yourself, but I'd love to hear, how did the shift come for you to say, we got to help these speakers because, man, they are not as direct as they should probably be?
Well, the shift came for me when I was invited to present at some breakout sessions for National Speakers Association. And my sense, Michelle, was that most professional speakers, consultants, and quite frankly, small business owners really sucked when answering the question, what do you do? Most speakers answered it by giving a topic and a vehicle, how they took their IP to the marketplace. And saying I'm a speaker on sales really doesn't say anything. And so my sense was, if I could come up with a formulatic approach to make it a little bit easier that spoke in outcomes, that might be a good way to do things. And that's how I created what I call a positioning statement, a concept and outcome statement of working with you. And I really started my business, Michelle, incredibly based on that one thing. It grew from there, though.
I love it. Now, one of the things that we talk about in the speaking world is knowing your audience and having that niche audience. You have a really tiny niche audience of speakers and helping speakers grow. Tell me about why you felt comfortable making that specific for you, because I think it will be very helpful as others watching and listening so that they can do the same. But tell us about your journey there. Well,
I'll tell you, at first, I wasn't comfortable doing that because I thought I'm not going to have enough business to make a living. And incredibly, I discovered, and what my clients have discovered over the last 20 years, is the tighter you niche your expertise and your audience, the more opportunity you're going to have. And you're going to get a bigger check for doing that. People, especially for professional speakers right now, the industry is looking for people who have specific expertise, highly defined expertise in a highly defined marketplace. And when you can do that, it's absolutely hitting the nail on the head as far as attracting clients. Most of us thinking, I'm no exception, but most of us thinking early on that if we cast a wider net, we'll catch more fish. And the opposite is true. So it can be counterintuitive at times, but that's what I tell my clients. The tighter you can put your expertise in the marketplace, in a target marketplace, the better you're going to do.
Amen. And yet it's hard. It's hard for me too. And my background is in marketing and advertising, and I know I need a target market. But for each of us, we worry that we leave something on the table if we exclude, when really we become so much more relevant and so much more interesting. So I appreciate that. Thank you. I want to talk about your book because you have a new book coming out. But before we do, one of the things that I think is important for this conversation is trends. There are trends happening in the speaking industry and things that are different now in 2024 than they've been before. What are some of the biggest influences that you're seeing affecting the speaking business? So for those who are watching that have speaking businesses as well, what are some things that they should be looking out for or aware of as they approach potential clients?
Well, I'll tell you, inflation has taken a toll. Everybody is aware of this in the marketplace. It's affected the marketplace for meeting professionals who are planning meetings. The interesting thing is that speakers have felt, just because of inflation, that they need to raise their fees. I think that this is a time to hold fast, maintain your market, be a steady in the marketplace. And I don't think that inflation is a good enough reason for us to raise our fees. It's a good enough reason for meeting planners to have to raise what they're charging for attendees to attend those meetings, Michelle. And I look at market indicators for professional speakers on raising your fees, not necessarily the economy. This might sound a little strange, but we need to make sure that the market is dictating what we are charging. So, for example, how busy are you? How many inquiries are you getting? How many times when you are talking to people who are making a decision, are you hearing that your fee is a fit for their budget? Because you risk overinflating just because there is a trend to do so in the marketplace. So look at all of the economic indicators, plus your target market that we were just talking about can affect your fees. You know, it's easier now, Michelle, than ever to do market intelligence on these things, to see where your fee should be. It's always such a hard question, I think, for people in an intellectual property business. How much is my intellectual property in the marketplace? With the advent of AI, we can now do market intelligence in minutes that used to take us days. So you need to be looking to see what your competitors are doing, where they're doing it, what they are charging, what kind of meetings that they're presenting at, and are they calling it a keynote, a breakout, a workshop, or does it matter? These are all things that we need to do. But I think being aware of market conditions is key. And secondly, I'll tell you, coming out of COVID, such a time of great loss, but there were some things that were blessings. I always try and look at the blessings in some of these things. One of the blessings coming out of COVID for professional speakers and consultants is Zoom. Virtual presentations has been horrific for speakers. It kept many of us alive during COVID, when all meetings were shut down, all gatherings were shut down. But looking at it now, how can you add this to your repertoire, to your menu of services, to be of greater service to your clients? And Michelle, you may be familiar with something that I call aftercare. It's after your speech. Where do you go with a client now that they've already invested in you? You can ask them, how can we take a next step together? And I used to ask this when I was doing sales presentations. And I would say this sentence, literally: do you think it would make sense to work with me to actually apply the ideas, tactics, and strategies I talked about on the platform? Because if you do, we could make that happen, and you don't have to fly me in to do it. And it's a loaded question, Michelle, because I'm asking them, do you want to spend thousands of dollars by bringing a speaker in? Or do you want to spend a fee plus a little bit more to actually implement the things that need to be done? And that's hard for somebody to say, no, it doesn't make sense, Michelle. We'll spend a lot of money to hear about it, but to actually do it is another thing. Well, I want decision makers to have to think about that before they say no. But virtual has just added a whole other thing to our business that has been fantastic. And people who are keeping their fingers on the pulse of what's going on in the intellectual property business will tell you that it is just another way of applying your expertise in a way that can make you money.
I love it. Thank you so much. I I know that if as speakers we're not mindful of some of these trends, I think that we can hurt our reputation for a long time. I think that being willing to adjust and adapt and change is so important in this business. And just being aware of the challenges that businesses are facing will change the way that you have conversations. And it makes you more relevant because you have been mindful of some of those challenges as well. So thank you for that. Let's dive into the book for a little bit. I have read your first book. Why the second book? What is different, and why did you feel the need to bring it out now?
Well, great question. And it wasn't exactly a hostage situation, Michelle, that I did this, but two young speakers, colleagues of ours, were coming in town to present at the same conference. And they said, boy, we'd love to have breakfast with you. Would you be available to have breakfast? And I said, absolutely, especially if you're buying. Mm-hmm. So we met at breakfast. They were walking me out to the car, and they both said, we love your book. We recommend it all the time. And I said, thank you, got in my car, and I was driving home, and I realized it is woefully out of date. Mm. It doesn't even have the word virtual in it, Michelle. And so I thought, I really need to update it. I'm still very proud of the first edition,
of course,
but there are things that have changed in the marketplace that I can address and that I've already been writing about. And then the real clincher, Michelle, was my daughter. Mm-hmm. I was talking to my daughter about it, and I said, I'm thinking about doing this. And she said these words that really made this become a plan. She said, Mom, this is your legacy. You've got to rewrite it. That was pretty dirty, wasn't it, Michelle? But so that's when I decided I'm absolutely going to do it. And then it was, what do I add? What is no longer evergreen that is in the original book? Because the original book has done really well for me. And it's a very niche book, Michelle. I remember when I wrote the original, somebody said, wow, how do you think it's going to do? And I said, this book is going to sell in the tens. And they said tens of thousands. I said, no, tens. And that's if my family buys it, because it's so niche. Amazingly, this little book has done really well for me. But it is time to update it. And it has new content on virtual, how to add virtual to your menu of services, how to integrate it maybe in a longer plan, like an aftercare plan. Also, I have new sales things, new market intelligence, also AI. And of course, by the time the book is published, we'll be so much farther down the road with AI already. But I wanted to let people know how I was using it. My clients are using it right now. And one of the big ways you alluded to, market intelligence. Using AI to find out what the biggest challenges are in your target market. If you have a target market and marry that with AI, specifically Perplexity or ChatGPT, you have the keys to the kingdom, because you can literally go in and say, what's keeping CEOs up at night in the financial services industry? Give me 10 things. Mm-hmm. Look at that, write 10 blog posts for each point it gives you. And then it also gives you things to discuss. How can you address those challenges? What's the intersection of your expertise and those challenges? It can be absolutely incredibly effective. So that's why I rewrote, and that's some of the new content. Also licensing. Almost everything we do now, Michelle, whether on Zoom or in person, is on video. How do you protect your rights? For those of us in the IP business, it's important that we set the parameters for the use of our video. So I addressed licensing too in the new edition.
I love it. I can't wait. I don't have my fingers on it yet, and I'm salivating over it. I want it right now.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that.
Yes. By the time this podcast comes out, if you're watching this, the book is available. Tell them where they can get the book.
They'll be able to get the book on Amazon, also Barnes & Noble. So please seek it out and let me know what you think, everyone.
I love it. Now, we're not quite done yet because I'm not going to let you go just yet. But for those who are like, oh no, where do I get it? I want to get it right now because now they can get it. I wanted to not make them wait until the very end. That's mean. But here's my question for you. I haven't read the book yet and I haven't seen it. I was sharing with a friend of mine the other day. I've been a professional speaker for 16 years. The marketplace is wildly different than it was when I first started. The marketplace is wildly different than when it was 5 years ago because of world events. And I feel like the marketplace is even different this year than it was last year. In some ways, I feel like corporations have what they call tech debt. Things that they had 10 years ago, software that they had 10 years ago, hardware they had 10 years ago, that is no longer helping and serving them. But then to be able to replace it is a really big hiccup. And so sometimes it's like, well, maybe we should just put a pot underneath the leak instead of fixing the pipe. But then that's where the tech debt comes in. And I feel like I have speaker debt. And so some speaker friends and I, as we're talking about, we are doing things that we were doing 13 years ago. We started podcasts because everyone was doing a podcast. We blogged because people were blogging. All these things that we're doing. What do you feel like is different for speakers now in terms of how they put themselves out there than it was before? You mentioned blog posts, like you mentioned getting the market intelligence to know here are the challenges that are facing your customers, write solutions, be a thought leader, put together that information. But is there anything else that you see what speakers, either something speakers are doing that they should stop doing, or something speakers should be doing because they're stuck doing things that they've been doing forever and it might not be helping them?
Well, first of all, let me say they should stop thinking everybody's a client. Because when you consider that everybody's a client, when you sit down at your desk, where the heck do you go from there? I often say, Michelle and I were at a conference just a month ago, and I got approached by someone, which is not unusual, who said, I really want to start speaking. This was a new person to the industry. And I said, what do you speak on? And they said, customer service. And I said, who needs what it is that you have? And he said, anyone who wants a real culture of customer service, I can help. And I said, well, let's go call everybody and see if they're interested. Because when you don't have a target market, that's your approach. And I'll tell you, when that's your approach, you end up doing nothing because you're in overwhelm. I think one of the things that has changed for speakers, and speakers now have to be absolutely highly tuned in to using video in all ways. Video. I am telling my clients that if you want to be hired, you need to be seen, literally, on video. So having a great preview video, I think for professional speakers is important, but taking one of your presentations that is taped and splitting it up into little segments, bite-sized pieces that are made for social media can be incredibly helpful for buyers. They allow people to see you in action. And really, even in a preview video, Michelle, I have said that we're not really communicating a lot of content. When you think a preview video is 4 to 6 minutes, there isn't a lot of content that you can put out there in 4 to 6 minutes. Decision makers looking at video are looking mainly, is this person comfortable? Do they have a presence? Are they able to communicate well? And are people tuned in, especially if there are some audience shots? Are people listening to this person? And what's their energy? So clips of you on, Instagram and TikTok were made for small video clips. And I'll tell you, some of my clients have been using a program that I discovered from our friend Terry Brock called Opus Pro, OPUS.pro. And I've used it on presentations that I've given, and it allows me to use AI literally. I have to drop a file in a box and then let it know how long of a clip I want. And then it will give me those clips. It will serve them up with hashtags. It will even grade my effectiveness in making certain points. Tools like these are leveling the playing field for a lot of speakers. It used to have a lot of money to get good video. and the playing field is leveled. So I would tell speakers, use video whenever you can, however you can, and saturate all of your social media with thought leadership, but make video a part of the plan.
I think that's a great tip. And I will put the link for Opus Clip Pro in the show notes as well. We use it in our business as well. So when I have a presentation, we cut it up, it goes into multiple places, and it does all the work for you. No offense to my fantastic videographer that is here at the back of the room, but he also doesn't want to be doing all of those little things as well. So it's great to utilize those resources and know how to get it done as quickly as possible. But with it takes the guesswork out of it for me too, because then I don't have to guess, do I put captions on? Do I highlight this thing? And just does it for me. And yes, you can change and do whatever you want, but it utilizes trends that I don't know about. And I'm grateful for that too.
And as I said, you don't have to invest a whole lot of money in a lot of this, especially since people are videotaping everything these days. Just take that and see what you can do with it. You can hire a film crew if you've got a great venue and a great program if you want to. But I'm telling newer speakers, don't do that. Don't do that. Look and see, what can I do with the video that I'm going to be handed after a presentation?
Great idea. Any other thoughts? I mean, we talked about video for a little bit. I just wanted to change subjects. If there was any other thought that you had for what speakers should be doing now.
Well, this is a really old school thing. And I'm going to tell you, I've been preaching this for 20 years, but I'm preaching this now, especially. Pick up the phone and engage with people who are making decisions. Because I heard from a client last week, Michelle, who picked up the phone to talk to a decision maker, had never hired her, but had been on her mailing list and commented on social media all the time. And she was going through some of her lower level qualification clients. And she just said, I'm going to call. So I called. She called and said, do you have anything coming up where you think I might be a fit? And he said, yes, I do. Now, that's what you risk when you ask a question directly, when you ask for an opportunity directly. You can't really qualify people on social media by email or text. You have to have a conversation to ascertain, am I even a fit for what they want to accomplish? Does my expertise address their challenges? Do they have a specific meeting where I'm available? And can they afford my fee? And you need to have that conversation. So don't be reticent to pick up the phone, because that still is the most important tool in your office.
I love it. And I'm not afraid. I was at a networking event a couple of weeks ago where they said, what's your favorite type of communication? It was a networking event on generations, and they were talking about Gen Z and millennials and older millennials and Gen X. And I was the only one in the room who said, I still love the phone. From the time I was little, I spoke on the phone all the time. And now if I can catch someone on the phone, they're almost surprised, but they need to hear my voice. They need to talk to me. They need to see what works. And we still use email to get out and to reach out to lots of people. But when there are things I really want, I'm picking up a phone. I'm making a phone call.
Listen, I think that you are so smart. And, this business, like to me, in all business, I worked for a Fortune 10 corporation in sales and marketing right out of college for a number of years. This is a relationship business, as is corporate business, small business, speaking and consulting is absolutely a relationship business. And you have to be in relationship to establish relationship. And one of the best ways is by having a conversation. This sounds so elementary, but some of these best practices, Michelle, we forget because everything is so high tech. Just remember that high touch is just as important now, if not more important than ever.
Yes, thank you. Now, we're drawing to a close, but I saved the best question for last, because this is the question that every speaker is thinking that's watching this. You mentioned this before, and I actually love that you said it first, but we're going to come back to it. You said that in this day and age, we have to be careful about what we're charging and not mistake inflation for an opportunity to increase our fees. But I want to have the money question and have the money conversation, Lois, and you're the right one to do this. How do you help your clients who are speakers make decisions about increasing their fee? What do you see as milestones or even check boxes that you recommend for someone as they consider raising their fees from wherever they are?
Well, as I said, I think this is one of the hardest questions that we all address in our business. But I think that there are certain touch points. And in the beginning, it's opportunity. I remember I used to speak on sales to corporations and associations. I tell people if they want to speak, then they got to get out and speak. I mean, I did every chamber of commerce within 200 miles of where I'm sitting right now in St. Louis. And if there was a bus stop with 3 people, I wanted to pull over the show and ask for an opportunity. So get out and speak. Your experience, how long you've lived with your expertise, where your expertise has come from. What is your level of presenting? As you look at yourself and look at competitors in the marketplace, how do you hold up? Where are you in relationship? Are you better than they are? Are you just as good? Or do you still have some upward mobility that you need to be reaching out for? These are all things that you need to ask yourself. I do think target markets can dictate this, Michelle. And, experience doesn't always matter, quite frankly, getting into target markets. I worked in manufacturing and corporations. I worked in financial services mostly when I did my sales programs. And, when people would ask my expertise, I decided not to say, well, I have a checking and savings account. I didn't think that would make them that confident, Michelle. But I did a lot of homework. And back then, we Googled for industry things that were written about it. I did Google searches on everything. Now we can fast track that, as we said before, with AI. But I think certain touch points, you need to look at what is your competition doing and who is your competition. Those are great ways to know what you should be charging. And, I say something else that I think has really been true. I've said this for about the last 6 or 7 years. If you're a professional speaker and your sense is that you're not charging enough, you're probably not charging enough. Because my sense is that most professional speakers are very conservative with what they charge because they're afraid of looking at losing opportunities. So what do you think? What is your sense of the marketplace? But also the conversations that we have on Zoom and by phone with decision makers if people are constantly saying yes, that's a sign that maybe you could go up a little bit. If you are constantly finding yourself in a negotiation and having to come up with extras or discounts in order to fit, that's a sign too that it's not time to raise your fees.
I love it. Great advice. Great advice, because that's the question everyone has. Now, they should still read your book because you have a great chapter in your book about money. And that's the subtitle, like Make More Money. So I love that. I know we're going to send everyone to Amazon or Barnes & Noble to get your book. Are there other places that you enjoy interacting with people? I would love for you to share if there's a social media channel that you love or an email newsletter. Please share that with our audience.
Well, thanks for asking. I'm probably the most visible on Facebook and LinkedIn. And Facebook seemingly is where my target market lives. For my speaker clients, I tell you, LinkedIn is where your buyers live. A lot of mine live on Facebook. So those are the two I'm most active in. I'm getting more active on Instagram. And don't, do as I say, not as I do. Get active on Instagram. I think it's important. It is the great place to show your expertise as well as say your expertise and let people see you doing it. I remember before all social media, remember we put our pictures on everything, Michelle, because the psychologist told us people like to work with people who look familiar. Well, I've got news for you. The more video you put out, the more familiar you become to buyers. So make it inviting, be familiar, and have that familiarity connected with great thought leadership you can't lose.
Great advice. And also for all of you speakers out there, do you love how she answered the question, but then she ended on a tip and not just where to find her? Lois is the best in the business. Please, I encourage you, if you're wanting to grow your business, reach out to her. I have invested in Lois. I don't just ask to pick her brain. I pay her money because she provides value to me and my business. And so I encourage you that if you're looking to grow, get the book, follow Lois, and get more information. Lois, thank you for being here on the Michelle McCullough Show. And we are cheering you on in your book launch and book release. And please keep us posted.
Honored to be with you today, Michelle. Thank you.